Hello, folks. I'm going to try another entry into the General Jay's Journal. These are some thoughts just from my own mind. As I kind of said before, I hope that this journal becomes kind of a resource for people, or at least give you something to think about. I'm not trying to tell you that I know everything about things, but I watch politics quite a bit. One of the questions that I've had people ask me in the past is, well, I don't even know what to think. I don't know, how do I know what to believe? You've got all these politicians saying all this stuff, and how do I know who's right or who's wrong? And I'm just going to give you sort of a way I kind of go through it. Because you do, in order to be a good citizen here, you've got to have a BS predictor on here. You've got to have a baloney detector, I should say. Because there's an awful lot of baloney out there in the political world. Folks, I'm talking to you right now. This is on the heels of the Democratic debate. This is just a day after the bombing in France, where Hillary Clinton, I just have to go here before we go anywhere else. Hillary Clinton was asked about her ties to Wall Street. And she came back and said, well, I've got these ties to Wall Street, and I sure did help work with them, and I've got these relationships, and I took the money from them to get Wall Street going so that we can strike back against the terrorists. Folks, if your baloney detector hasn't gone off yet, it needs to go on. You need to get that thing calibrated. Just listen in a little bit, because I'll try to call them as I see them. I will say this, it's a little harder. I'm not as good at picking out Democratic BS as I am Republican BS, because I think, like everybody, I kind of pull for them, and I kind of give them a little bit of a break. So that's where the comments come in. If you find me slipping, go ahead and point it on out. What I want to focus on is one thing, though, today in particular. I think that on the Republican side, I think this income inequality issue is going to be big. And I think that it's a very vulnerable place for the Republican Party. Because we've had 30 years of this trickle-down economics, supply-side economics, and it hasn't really worked out for the average working person. All right? I don't care whether if you're an auto mechanic or a machinist or a welder or a teacher, you're not making a whole lot more than what you were 15 years ago. All right? Your wages have been flat compared to CEO salaries, which have absolutely skyrocketed. Let me give you my take on trickle-down economics before we get into this. What trickle-down economics, I was explained to me, imagine a train. You got a 100-person train. Now, the only way the train moves is the locomotive is pulling it. That's what's creating all of the energy. So the Republican idea is, man, we got to feed that locomotive, because if we're going to get up over the hill, that locomotive is going to pull us all up over the hill, and we're all going to go up together. That's their thought process. What in effect happened is, we fed the locomotive, it somehow unhooked from the rest of it, and it went up the hill, and the rest of us are still at the bottom of the hill. That's sort of what's happened. I want to bring your attention to the Republican debate. This was on CNBC, but you're going to see this as these debates and as these things play out. The Republican Party can't ignore income inequality anymore. This is not just some crazy thing that the leftists on Occupy Wall Street are talking about. This is not just something that's talked about in these left-leaning blogs and papers that I was reading 10, 15 years ago, that this thing is happening. This is busted out, and it's in mainstream right now. So they can't ignore it. What I want you to look for is Republican candidates perfectly eloquently describing the problem. But then, when charged with coming up with a policy that they, as president, as the head of the government, can do to fix it, they're not going to have anything. I've got a couple of clips for you folks. First one up is Mike Huckabee on income inequality. You won't believe what his solution to income inequality. What I want you to look for in this whole thing is watch Mike Huckabee perfectly describe this issue. He's going to eloquently talk about the issue, and he's going to get it right. But then when it comes time to fixing it, well, you guys listen and we'll be right back.
So look, corporations ought to exercise some responsibility. When CEO income has risen 90% above the average worker, when the bottom 90% of this country's economy has had stagnant wages for the past 40 years. Somebody is taking it in the teeth, and it's not the folks on Wall Street. I'm not anti-Wall Street, but I don't believe the government ought to wear a team jersey, pick winners and losers. The government ought to wear a striped shirt and just make sure the game is played fairly. Now, everybody else has fudged their time and gone over, so please, don't cut me off too quick, Becky.
All right, Governor.
Let me just close it up.
How about 15 more seconds?
We need to be focusing on what fixes this country. And I'll tell you one thing that we never talk about. We haven't talked about it tonight. Why aren't we talking about, instead of cutting benefits for old people, cutting benefits for sick people, why don't we say, let's cure the 4 big cost-driving diseases,
Governor.
Diabetes, heart disease,
Governor,
cancer, and Alzheimer's. If you do that, you don't just change the economy, you transform the lives of millions of hurting Americans.
Governor, thank you.
I'd love for us to talk about
Governor,
something like that. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Oh my gosh. Now, you guys, you had to have seen that. You just had to have seen that. Did you see how eloquent he was talking about CEO salaries going through the roof? Did you see that? And that's absolutely true. Oh my gosh. Back when I first started working in 1982 into the workforce, the CEO was making like 20 times more than the lowest paid person. Now they're making 1,000 times more. He's perfect on that. But what was his solution? All we got to do is cure cancer? Oh, I see. Curing cancer is going to stop income inequality. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. I mean, this is the problem. This is the crux of the problem. I'm going to show other clips. You can see other guys falling into the same trap. It's not just Huckabee. But the problem is, folks, is that the Republican Party's ideology prevents them from dealing with certain issues. Now, I'm not saying that Republican ideology is bad for everything. Look, they're all about small government. They're about low taxes. They like personal responsibility. And they like a strong military. Those ain't necessarily bad things. And what they really love is, please give me a problem that I can solve by slower government and smaller taxes and personal responsibility. You give me a problem like that, I'm going to hit it out of the park. But give me a problem like income inequality where there is, look, you've got to have some rules on this thing. All right? And what he said is the government shouldn't pick winners and losers. Hey, what are you going to do with the federal government to fix this problem? And he just takes a total pass. Oh, it's not about government getting involved. If government gets involved, it screws it up even more. Okay? I mean, this is the problem. They are incapable of dealing with this issue because their ideology prevents them from doing it. The Republican Party is all about intervening in the economy if it is to benefit the employer. If they're trying to benefit your boss or your company by saying, oh, sure, let's get rid of all the taxes. Oh, sure, let's make it so that people can't unionize. Oh, sure, let's make sure that there's no EPA. There's nothing dealing with worker safety or environmental safety. They're more than happy to stick their finger on the scale, on the economic scale, and help your employer. Sure, you want to operate tax-free? We can do that. But when it comes to intervening in the economy on behalf of the employee, oh no, we don't want the government picking winners and losers. We're just going to wear a striped shirt. So, it's going to be me fighting some 300-pound lineman from the Chicago Bears, and they're just going to go ahead and call the fight even, as opposed to keeping this guy from stomping me into the ground. I don't know. That's what we're looking at. We're going to go to another clip here, folks. Who am I going to have next? Let's go with Governor Bush, talking about why does his tax plan tax labor more than it taxed Wall Street investing income. And we'll see what he has to say about that.
John?
Governor Bush, the tax reform bill that Ronald Reagan signed in 1986 cut the top personal income tax rate to 28%, just like your plan does. But President Reagan taxed capital gains at the same rate, while you would tax them at just 20%. Given the problems we've been discussing, growing gap between rich and poor, why would you tax labor at a higher rate than income from investments?
Look, the simple fact is that my plan actually gives the middle class the greatest break. $2,000 per family. And if you make $40,000 a year, a family of four, you don't pay any income tax at all. Simplifying the code and lowering rates, both for corporations and personal rates, is exactly what we need to do. You think about the regulatory costs and the tax costs. That's why small businesses are closing rather than being formed in our country right now. The big corporations have the scale to deal with all of this. And what I think all of us are saying is our monetary policy, our tax policy, regulatory policy needs to be radically changed so that we can create high sustained growth for income to rise. The government has tried it their way. Under Barack Obama and the proposals of Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders and others, they've tried it their way and it has failed miserably. We need to take a new approach of taxing, reforming how we tax and reforming the regulations in our country before it's too late.
Okay, folks, did you catch that? All right. Let me break this one down for you. And I encourage people, go on back and look at it again after you hear what I'm talking about here. The question that Governor Bush got was, why is it that your tax plan taxes labor, or what they're saying is, why does your tax plan tax people who are getting a paycheck every 2 weeks? How come it's taxing that kind of money more than it's taxing the money that some wealthy guy is getting because he's got $1.3 million in the bank and he's getting interest off of that money? Why is work taxed more than just sitting home letting money make money? That was the question he was asked. Look and see what his answer was. It's a total dodge. He didn't even deal with the question of, explain to me the principle of taxing people that go to work for a living more than people that just sit home and take money out of the stock market. He didn't even deal with that. And then later on, as he's talking about the benefits that I'm giving to people that go to work, but he's not dealing with the fact that he's given a bigger break to the wealthy people. He doesn't deal with that. Then he turns around and confuses this idea of growth because I want to pursue a pro-growth policy. Why do you care? If you're a person that's working for a living, why do you care how much a company grows if it's not producing American jobs? There's a whole bunch of companies that are bigger than they used to be, but they don't even operate in America anymore. So why would I care if Levi's jeans is, for instance, is bigger than it used to be if it doesn't even make jeans here anymore? All right? And people, ask yourself this question. Look at your own situation. There's so many folks over the last 20, 30 years that have experienced this flat line in terms of wages and raises and benefit package, and any raise that you did get was taken away because your healthcare costs are higher. You know, that benefit package has stayed relatively flat, even if your company experienced growth. And this is one of the problems with the Republican ideology. Either they're doing this on purpose, they know that growth doesn't have anything to do with benefit to people necessarily, or they don't understand that growth doesn't have anything to do with the benefit of the wage earners. I'll give you the other example. Here's a really good example, is McDonald's. Let's think of McDonald's. Do you think McDonald's has more stores or fewer stores than they had 30 years ago? They have way more stores. Do you think that McDonald's people are really making any more minimum wage than just like they always have? All right? So growth at McDonald's didn't mean benefit to McDonald's workers. That's the point that I want you to see. And I want you to be able to see through this sort of BS. And there are code words that they've got out there that's designed to fool you. And I'm just trying to tune up your baloney detector. If you disagree with me, please put it in the comments, because I'm actually searching for truth here myself. And if you see it a different way, please explain to me how it works. Because I absolutely see tons of companies that have grown, but their workers aren't getting any benefit from any of that growth. I've seen companies that are much more efficient, but all of the profit generated by the new efficiency has gone to the top and it didn't go to the worker. That didn't always used to be true. I'm old enough and I've been in machining, so I remember what was called the CNC revolution. When I first started machining, it was all very much manual machines. Then they had these automated machines tied to a computer, and suddenly you had this one machining center that could do 10 operations on one setup. Woo! Woo! That was hugely efficient. And some of that benefit of efficiency went to the machinists, who now were making more money than they used to because they have to know how to interface with this computer. And then some of it went to the top and went to the shareholders. Now, all of those efficiency gains, none of it goes to the worker, and it all goes to the top. That's what's happening out there, folks. Please get your baloney detector in line. The next clip I want you to look at is Senator Rubio. And this will be a very good one. All right. Harwood points out that Rubio's tax plan gives twice as much of a tax break to people in the top 1%. People are making something like, say $100,000 a week. So his tax code gives the guy that makes $100,000 a week twice as much of a tax break as the person that's making, say, $1,000 a week. And watch Rubio's response.
Senator Rubio, 30 seconds to you. The Tax Foundation, which was alluded to earlier, scored your tax plan and concluded that you give nearly twice as much of a gain in after-tax income to the top 1% as to people in the middle of the income scale. Since you're the champion of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, don't you have that backward?
No, you're wrong. In fact, the largest after-tax gains is for the people at the lower end of the tax spectrum under my plan. And there's a bunch of things my tax plan does to help them. Number one, you have people in this country.
Tax Foundation, just to be clear, they said the gains after-tax income.
You wrote a story on it, and you had to go back and correct it. You did.
I did not.
Oh, you did.
No.
And so,
Senator, the Tax Foundation said after-tax income for the top 1% under your plan would go up 27.9%.
Well, you're talking
and
about
people in the middle of the income spectrum about 15%.
Yeah, but because the math is, if you 5% of a million is a lot more than 5% of 1,000. So yes, if someone makes more money, numerically it's going to be higher. But the greatest gains percentage-wise for people are going to be at the lower end of our plan. And here's why: because in addition to a general personal exemption, we are increasing the per-child tax credit for working families. We are lowering taxes on small business. You know, a lot of business activity in America is conducted like the guy that does my dry cleaning. He's an S corporation. He pays on his personal rate. And he is paying higher than the big dry cleaning chain down the street because he's paying at his personal rate. Under my plan, no business, big or small, will pay more than 25% flat rate on their business income. That is a dramatic tax decrease for hardworking people who run their own businesses.
John, I'd like to address
the other point that I would make about our plan. One more point. It is the most pro-growth tax plan that I can imagine because it doesn't tax investments at all. You know why? The more you tax something, the less of it you get. I want America to be the best place in the world for people to invest.
Senator, thank you.
I'd like to read.
Okay, folks. That was a world-class bull spitter, okay? And let me point it out. I want you to go back and look at the tape if you don't believe me, all right? But here's what Rubio is so deft at doing, okay? He changed the question. What Harwood said, what he pointed out, was that Rubio's tax plan gives twice as big of a tax break to the people who are at the top 1%. Let me break that down. He's saying that Rubio's tax plan gives twice as much tax break to people who are making $8,000 a week than he does to the people in the middle who are making maybe $1,000 a week or $750 a week. Those are the people that you and I know, right? So Harwood is saying, how come the people that are going to work every day and buying, trucks and driving around in Chevys and stuff like that and are making $750 or $1,000 a week, how come those people get half the tax break that the folks that are making $8,000, $10,000, $110,000 a week? So what Rubio says, oh no, that's not true. My tax plan gives the biggest tax break to the folks at the bottom. Harwood didn't ask you about the bottom. He wasn't asking about the people that are making $100 a week. He's not asking about the people that are not making hardly any money. He said the people in the middle. And so Rubio doesn't even answer the question. Now, what I'd like you to do is go down to the bottom. I'm going to figure out how to post the links so that you can see what this tax foundation, the place that they were referring to, is saying. There is a wonderful, wonderful chart that's there. And there's also a calculator. So if you didn't know where you fit, whether you're in the top 50% or the bottom 50%, you can just punch it in. You can say, hey, $35,000. Am I in the top 50% or the bottom 50%? Now, it turns out that at $35,000, was that the bottom 50%? I think it's the bottom 50%. If you make $40,000 a year, you're in the top 50%. So here's the way I kind of broke it down here. If you look at this chart, and what you can see is, yes, the people making 0 to 10% on the scale, which are the folks at the very, very bottom, they're making maybe $100 or $200 a week on average. Those folks are going to get a 44% tax break. Well, that's great. You're making a 44% tax break on no money. So that's good. But if you're in the middle here, if you're at the absolute dead middle, the 50 to 60% tax bracket, which is probably around $40,000 a year, might be around $750 a week, maybe $1,000 a week, somewhere in there. If you're in there, you're going to get a 2.4% tax break. Compare that to the people that are making, the people who are making $8,000, $10,000, $100,000 a week, they're going to get an 11% tax break. How in the world are they making who are making $10,000 a week, how do they get a bigger tax break than the people who are only making $1,000 a week? This is how these guys dance around the subject. You got to listen close. You have to develop your baloney detector. And it's easy enough to do. I want you to think about the word skeptical, because that's what I fancy myself as, is being skeptical of anything anybody tells me, whether it's Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, anybody on the Republican side. But here's what skeptical means. Skeptical doesn't mean that I'm closed-minded. It means that I'm willing to accept what you're telling me, but you got to show me. You got to show me. If you can show it to me and prove it to me, I'll accept it. It doesn't mean closed-minded. It also doesn't mean gullible, as in, oh, as long as it's Bernie Sanders, he can say it and I'll believe it. No. As long as it's Barack Obama, he can say it, I'll believe it. No. You got to be skeptical. But I believe that if you use this measurement, what you are going to find is the people on that Republican side are waiting in doo-doo all day. All day they are. And I'm showing you the facts of it. I want you to just take a minute. See it one more time. The guy asked him a question. How come your tax plan gives working people half the tax break that it gives idle rich people who are just getting money from Wall Street? And he says, oh, no, it gives so much more to the people who are working 1 day a month or something. That ain't what Howard asked him. So this is just what I want to show you. It's a real quick thing. Hopefully we'll do the Democratic one at some point. But there's a lot less material for me to work with. Now, if you're a Republican and you think there's a lot more material, please give me a suggestion, because I'd love to be able to see it. I've told you I've got a little bit of a blind spot because I am on the left, but I know I got a blind spot. That's why Republicans are there, to help me see it. So I encourage you, go ahead and participate, folks. We'll see you next time. And remember, this is your democracy. You're going to have to use it or you'll lose it. Thank you.